The Greece thing starts it all. There's no more propaganda. They can't say, oh, well, there'll be another bailout and everything will be fine. It's all over because Greece gets the ball rolling. Next up is Portugal and Spain and Italy and France.
Well, it's all happening now, isn't it, Andy?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Let's just jump right in. Guys, Andy Hoffman's back on the line for a very important and fortuitous update. Andy was scheduled to join us today on Monday, of course. Yesterday, the Greek people collectively and resoundingly voted no to more bankster austerity and tyranny. And Andy, my friend, Wealth Watchman, says July is turning out to be simply stunning. In a short space of time, Syriza called a referendum. Greece defaulted on a 1.7 billion euro payment to the IMF, and now the Greek people, in an overwhelming statement to their creditors, have said, hell no. And just think of it, this all occurred in a little more than a week. You predicted they'd vote no, and I thought maybe the banksters would find a way to steal this one too, Andy.
Yeah, as usual, the propaganda was rampant about how it was going to be a yes vote. It was everywhere. Even some of the people in our corner, the so-called good guys, were talking about the yes vote and the rigging of the vote. Look, Greece, if they have been through hell and back, there is no way this vote was going to be rigged, and there was no way that the people were going to allow what they've been put through to get any worse. And again, it was, unlike Switzerland or Scotland, the powers that be couldn't threaten them by claiming that the stock market would fall. They said, no, the stock market already has fallen, the economy has fallen, the people have been in debt servitude for a long time because of the policies of the Troika and the investment bankers, and they want out. And, this was their Iceland moment. Only in this case, unlike Iceland, which was isolated, meaning they were not part of the Euro system with the ability to, to cause mass defaults and, across the rest of the system, Greece is. And no matter how hard the powers that be try to, to pawn this off as just an isolated event, it's absolutely not. You've already seen the usual suspects out, like Marine Le Pen in France, saying we're going to do the same thing. Austria just hit their referendum petition criterion on Friday, so they're going to be talking about it. In Britain, which isn't in the euro currency, but you're in the eurozone, they're going to be having a referendum to get out next year. And of course, Spain has its elections in 5 months, where the Podemos party is going to win and do the same thing. So there's no doubt in my mind that the euro is going to break up. It's just a matter of how long can the game be strung along, and I don't think it can be much longer.
Yeah, and on the back of all of this is nation states saying they would like their gold back fed. They would like their gold shipped back to them for safekeeping. What a crazy world in which we live, Andy. And of course, against the backdrop of all this, we have Christine Lagarde saying the IMF is ready to assist Greece. I love it when these banksters actually find themselves in a corner. And I kind of think that that's what's happening here, Andy. The banksters, the IMF, the central banksters, the ECB, they find themselves backed up into a corner by the people. The people have said hell no. Yeah. And that's very, very refreshing.
I wrote an article in November called Revenge of the People, and I said, like Switzerland and Scotland and Catalonia last year, we're going to see more and more of the people rebelling, because you can't whitewash reality forever by just painting higher stock markets. And heck, in China now, we've lost 30% on the stock market in 2 weeks. Right. It's only a matter of time before others lose it. The people are the 99% of the world have been suffering from these hyper monetary inflation policies, and they are fighting back. And that's why you had, Britain is going to have its referendum now. Greece has having its. Austria. Then you're going to have one, like I said, in Spain. Then you're going to see Italy, France, and not just in Europe. You're going to see it around the world. People want out from the tyranny of the central banks. The only difference between now and the other 600 central banks of the past that have failed is that they're all now interlinked by a global fiat currency regime, and therefore the collapse will be that much greater. And again, the bubbles are vastly bigger. I mean, for years I tried to avoid the word bubble because there was no retail participation. It was just banks pushing things up. But of course, in China, we now know that that's the complete opposite truth. They have had more retail participation in this bubble than we ever had in our NASDAQ bubble. And of course, we're now at record valuations for these Western assets, while the global economy is at its singular worst point of our lifetimes. And in fact, they're desperately trying to get the stock market up today. And meanwhile, the commodity index is in full free fall mode. The CRB index is now just 4% from its 2009 spike bottom low at the bottom of the crisis, and another 4% from the 40-year support that's been holding it up since the early 1970s. And as I wrote in the direst prediction of all, based on the great work of David Stockman, we have more oversupply and overcapacity in commodities around the world than ever in history because of all the deformation of the economy, because of all the money printing. And it's going to cause, outside of hyperinflation or war, which are both very possible, massive, massive declines in commodity prices. And this with over-indebted governments and corporations around the world. This is their biggest source of income. That includes the United States, by the way, where a third of all corporate capital expenditures are in the oil and gas industry. Oh, and by the way, the hedges in the shale industry that were keeping it afloat for a few more months are about to expire. So again, you're seeing a political and a social unrest, get ready to explode at the same time where the global economy is collapsing. And of course, the money printing is about to really go parabolic. And, barring a black swan event, which just destroys everything in all fell swoop, it's gonna hit its denouement when Janet Yellen does what I call the Yellen reversal and goes for QE4. It's coming, and when it does, you better have your gold and silver in hand.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about the global margin call. I was just talking to Bill Holter about that, so let's put that on the back burner for a second. But I did notice this morning that the bottom has absolutely fallen out of copper. And ironically, Andy, despite what's going on in Greece, silver and gold remain capped. I mean, this is the backdrop in which silver and gold should be rocketing higher, but of course the cartel will cap those metals because they cannot send the world the message that the only thing you can trust is physical gold and silver. And getting back to Christine Lagarde, let me quote her. The IMF, she says, has taken note of yesterday's referendum held in Greece. We are monitoring the situation closely and stand ready to assist Greece if requested to do so, end quote. How frickin' hilarious is that? I wonder at which point, Andy, Christine Lagarde will ask the Pentagon to send in some freedom drones to drop love bombs and help spread democracy in Greece. These people are so transparent and pathetic, it really defies belief. And thank God the people of Greece stood up and had their Icelandic moment. Rant over. So let me ask you about the global margin call.
Well, let me go back to Christine Lagarde again. The biggest thing that we've been talking about here, Miles Franklin and many others in our field have been talking about, is the lack of credibility of central banks and the blow that, one, the failure of their policies to do anything except create bubbles has been. But now here, I mean, they just did their QE and it's failed, and now Greece is leaving the system. No one cares what they have to say anymore. In fact, I don't even want to hear about. First of all, Christine Lagarde is going to be fired any day, and the IMF is going to be rendered obsolete, as will the ECB after its super QE, which it's about to unleash, as will the Fed and all these things. I mean, they're failing. That's the whole point. The whole world is wise to what they're doing now, and the Greek thing only starts. It's only symbolic of what's to come as the whole world starts to ignore what these people do, other than to realize they're creating hyperinflation and to protect themselves from it.
Absolutely, Andy. Well, let's move on here. I want to ask you about the global margin call. I was just talking to Bill Holter about that. What is your opinion here? Now, the dominoes should start to fall in earnest because the credit default swaps, any exposure that these too big to fail, evil, criminal international banks have to Greece, this is the moment. This is the precipice. At what point do we start to see the dominoes really collapse in earnest? Or are we?
Well, of course we will. I mean, look, they have more sophisticated weapons of mass financial destruction, as I call them, than ever before, which are basically algorithms for the markets and derivatives. And look, we just found out last week, Citibank all of a sudden has $50 billion of precious metal derivatives, and JP Morgan has $4 trillion of derivatives. Right. I mean, basically, to me, it just means massive naked shorts. And all they're doing is creating physical squeezes. I mean, look, there are markets that you can manipulate forever. You can certainly manipulate the Dow Jones propaganda average forever. They can just print as much money as they want and take it to 10 million. I mean, people will lose their money in real terms because they'll lose it to hyperinflation. But, in markets like oil and gold, you can't fool the physical supply and demand fundamentals, forever. And in gold and silver, it's getting absolutely ridiculous because you see visibly the mining industry in full implosion right now. There's no doubt in my mind, this isn't even a speculation. We've already reached peak gold, probably forever, because once gold really surges, the governments will nationalize everything and they'll screw it all up. They'll never be able to produce anything. And in silver, now that the base metal prices are in full free fall, we're going to pretty soon, I think we're going to be at the 2008 lows of lead, zinc, and copper. And then you're going to really see a free fall in silver production. And meanwhile, we're at record high demand worldwide, and we're at record low inventories worldwide. I mean, you can't even compare. Remember back in 2008 when we ran out of silver and almost ran out of gold, demand is dramatically higher, like by many multiples from when it was in 2008. And this crisis is going to be far worse, and there'll be no backstop for the central banks. As I said, no one will even listen to them anymore. They'll laugh if Janet Yellen tries to do QE4. All they'll do is realize this is hyperinflation coming and prepare for it. So again, the global margin call, it's everywhere. We have record high asset prices on leverage everywhere during the worst economy ever. So of course those things are going to come down. Whether they do it due to hyperinflation or due to a crash, I don't know. But in real terms, we are going to have spectacular, colossal losses in financial assets and a lot of other assets that have been boosted by the bubble. And meanwhile, as I wrote in supply response, it's the complete opposite for gold and silver. They've been artificially suppressed. So there is no supply out there. There are no inventories out there. And of course, demand continues to rise. And if you think demand is up now, just wait to see what it's going to be like when the powers that be start to really lose control of markets. And by the way, they have lost control of commodities markets. They're losing control of currency markets. It's only a matter of time before they lose some stock or bond market somewhere that, maybe it's China, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, you're right. And the credit markets are what we have to keep an eye on. But I want to circle back here to the smoking gun, the precious metals matter. First, one thought you said that demand is at an all-time high. Demand is off the chart compared to where it even was after the last crisis. And you're 100% right. Look at India. According to Steve St. Angelo, they're taking down 33% of the world's physical silver supply in 2015. That's on the back of 25% of the world's silver supply last year. Demand is off the charts. And, we're not even seeing the crisis that we're seeing in Europe and in Greece, in India. So when the world wakes up to precious metals and the need to have them in order to protect their wealth, you're absolutely right. There is going to be such a shortage of physical that it's going to defy belief. And maybe that's why Citigroup, as you mentioned in the derivative space here, Citigroup's own precious metals derivatives position jumped from about $4 billion in Q4 2014 to $53 billion in Q1 2015, Andy. And that's not me. That's not conspiracy. That's not hyperbole. That comes from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency's own report. These guys know that precious metals matter, so they're pulling out all the stops in their derivatives portfolios to try to stomp down the prices of these metals, because it is the ultimate beach ball. And once that beach ball is let go, it's going to shoot to the moon.
Yeah, well, that's why you have record high open interest on the COMEX silver with the prices down, 65% from their highs. I mean, that's naked shorting. Obviously, that silver doesn't exist. Let's look at the inventories that they purport. I mean, look, they lie about everything. But if they're trying to keep the prices down, the last thing they're going to do is show that they have almost no inventory. And that's what they're showing. In gold, they have almost no inventory. In silver, they have almost no inventory. The GLD has lost half of its inventory since 2008. So obviously there's not much out there. And in China, we talk about India, you're not even seeing you're talking about the black market that's still rampant because of those tariffs that are still there. And in China, the Shanghai exchange deliveries this year, meaning the first 6 months of the year, are about 75% of global production. That's just Chinese deliveries from one exchange. So obviously, between derivatives and cleaning out whatever physical inventory still remains, that they're on fumes. So of course, this is only gonna balloon on them as things get worse. It's a Ponzi scheme, both the gold scheme and the money printing scheme, and they're gonna hit each other in full force. They are hitting each other. The Greece thing starts it all. There's no more propaganda. They can't say, oh, well, there'll be another bailout, everything will be fine. It's all over because Greece gets the ball rolling. Next up is Portugal and Spain and Italy and France and everyone else who realizes that the 1% have tried to take over the world and are probably going to fail. And that's when the vultures smell the blood, and that's when they come in, and whether it's the gold market or the oil market or the derivatives market or something is going to destroy what they're trying to do, because it's been a giant failure, and every instance in history of such has been a giant failure.
Yeah, you're right. Well, if I may, let me read this. The Emperor's New Clothes. Many years ago, there lived an emperor who cared only about his clothes and about showing them off One day he heard from two swindlers that they could make the finest suit of clothes from the most beautiful cloth. This cloth, they said, also had the special capability that it was invisible to anyone who was either stupid or not fit for his position. Being a bit nervous about whether he himself would be able to see the cloth, the emperor first sent two of his most trusted men to see it. Of course, neither would admit that they could not see the cloth, and so they praised it. And the townspeople had also heard of the cloth and were interested to learn how stupid their neighbors were. The emperor then allowed himself to be dressed in the clothes for a procession through town, never admitting that he was too unfit and stupid to see what he was wearing, for he was afraid that the other people would think he was stupid. Of course, all the townspeople wildly praised the magnificent clothes of the emperor, afraid to admit that they could not see them, until a small child said, "But he has nothing on." The reason I read that, Andy, is because Barack Obama himself is promising that events in Greece and Puerto Rico will not cause a global economic crisis. And he assures the American people that what's going on in Europe won't affect us.
I'm surprised that he even knows what's going on in Greece and Puerto Rico.
Well, he should. His top donor was Goldman Sachs.
I don't think he has the slightest idea how economics work. He just knows that someone within his group is keeping the stock market higher, which means everything's well, and they're manipulating the jobs report so he can say that there's a lot of jobs. Although, of course, Thursday's job report was, historically horrible. Each one surprises me at how bad they are, but I think Thursday's might have been the worst of all the jobs reports that I've seen. With 650,000 people leaving the labor force and 350,000 full-time jobs being lost, and the lowest labor participation rate in 38 years. In fact, it was the second biggest drop in the labor participation rate in 1 month in the past 20 years, and I think the fourth largest drop of all time. So again, talk about an emperor with no clothes. And on top of that, the thing that really kills me about how clueless politicians are and how they don't realize anything about economics. He's trying to get this deal done with Iran, to say, well, if you don't make nuclear weapons, we'll let you sell your oil, because he wants to market it as like his Camp David moment, so he could say, vote for Democrats next year, etc. And what he's going to do in this meaningless agreement, Iran's nukes have nothing to do with anyone, to be honest with you, is just swamp the world with Iranian oil, which is going to destroy the shale industry once and for all. And all in the name of some silly peace agreement, which means nothing. We're talking about Keystone cops in the political offices, Keystone cops in the bankers' offices. Did you see China today? They said you're not allowed to say anything negative about the stock market. They're saying that all these people that have lost all this money on margin, and by the way, they said all the money lost on margin because of all that, just 2 weeks of margin losses has equaled all of the gains made in 150% gain in the Shanghai Exchange in 2 years. That's how clueless bankers and politicians are right now. So again, it's the people finally starting to realize this. The people will prevail. It's not like they'll have great lives for it, but they are not going to let this go on anymore. And economic Mother Nature won't let it go on anymore.
Yeah, well, you say China's issued a mandate saying that people can't say anything negative about the stock market. It reminds me of what's going on in Japan. The Japanese media, the Japanese press can't say anything negative about what's going on in Fukushima. They can't even report about it lest they want to go to jail. And in this country, Obama, the emperor who wears no clothes, wants to assure the American people that the TPP is for their own benefit, but you can't read it. And we're going to develop it and fast track it in secret, and we're going to work with the corporations to write it. But you can just trust me because everything I tell you is absolutely true when all he ever does is lie. The TPP will benefit America. Let's go back to that jobs report. If you think that NAFTA made our lives a living hell, if you're troubled by the fact that all of the manufacturing jobs have been replaced by waiter and bartender jobs, just wait till they shove the TPP down our throats, Andy, and that's why humanity needs to rise now. That's why the American people need to take a page from the playbook of the Greeks and the Icelanders. The time is now. We don't have another 10 years to burn on this thing. We don't have another 5 years to burn on it. We don't have another 2 years to let these people destroy us because they're actively trying to destroy us right now.
Well, I couldn't agree more. You said it. You said it perfectly. But again, the people who are in charge. There are a handful of people who are seeking to milk the wealth, and there are a bunch of people who just happen to be in positions of power who are just completely clueless. And that's where I think Obama stands. I think his job is to stay in power, and he'll just say what he's told. and what he's told is a lot of incredibly dumb things. And he's, the scary thing is he's made Bush look good, and whoever comes in next is going to make Obama look good. And so that's why I'm really fearful about what's coming, not just for here, for everywhere, because I think you're going to see a lot of demagogues start to emerge as things get worse. It happens all the time, and so people need to prepare financially, mentally, in every way, shape, or form for what's coming, because the unwind of history's largest Ponzi scheme is going to be unprecedented.
Yeah. Let me read this to you. This is very, very important. You said whoever comes in next will make Obama look good. Well, that's their plan, because what are they giving us? They want to give us Hillary Clinton, an uber criminal, or Jeb Bush, a member of an uber criminal family, in 2016. That's what they want to give us, and it cannot be allowed to happen, because let me read this to you. This is from Freedom Outpost via Fox News and Judge Andrew Napolitano. New World Order criminal, we posted. Hillary Clinton bombshell. Documents prove she is guilty of multiple felonies. I'm reading this to you guys because Andy just said, whoever comes in next will make Obama look good. That is the playbook. These people are more than happy to play their role as the puppets they are to these New World Order powers, the Rothschild, Rockefeller, Bankster powers. Let me read this. Judge Andrew Napolitano held nothing back on Fox Business News Thursday morning while discussing Hillary Clinton's culpability in the foreign policy disaster that is Libya and Syria. He says, the documents I received was about 600 pages, and they consisted of interviews of an arms dealer and emails from the arms dealer to members of Congress and back and forth in the arms deal at the State Department. I am convinced, as are others who have looked at this, that a conspiracy existed between the President and Mrs. Clinton and congressional leaders from both parties in both houses, others in the State Department, the Treasury Department, and the Justice Department, to get arms shipped to rebels in Syria and in Libya. And some of those rebels are members of organizations that are on the terror list, and providing them with material assistance is a felony. So the arms dealers applied for and received permission from state and treasury lawfully to sell arms to the government of Qatar. Qatar then sold, delivered, bartered, and gave these arms to terrorist organizations with the knowledge and consent of Hillary Rodham Clinton when she was Secretary of State. And this is the candidate that the mainstream Mockingbird media tells you is the frontrunner for the Democratic nomination. Regardless of her crimes, regardless of what she does, she always gets a free pass. She is the frontrunner. And Jeb Bush, on the other hand. That is what we're up against. They want to shove two puppets down our throats again in 2016. And as you said, their job, Andy, will be to make Obama look good by comparison.
Yes, and then after that, we'll get the Bush twins against Chelsea Clinton, and
Yeah.
et cetera. Look, and as you know, I focus more on the financial side, but it's all part and parcel. It's no coincidence that the political and the economic and the financial and the social landscape are all moving in the same direction. And the only way there's any hope of it turning around is Greece-like, to collapse and rise from the ashes. And, boy, do we have a long way to collapse.
Yeah, we do. And, it just needs to be said, though, because, the TPP, mandatory vaccines being shoved down the throats of Californians, SB 277, despite Californians en masse saying, we don't want your poison needles in our kids. If we choose that's against our best interests, that's our right. And the California government says, no, we're going to do it anyway. The tyranny is rampant. And the precious metals story is so important because, again, we know from the derivatives positions of JP Morgan, Citigroup, HSBC, and others that the smoking gun that precious metals matter is that these guys have upped their derivatives positions in silver and gold. Boy, in the case of Citi, Andy, it's more than tenfold in Q1 of 2015. That's the smoking gun. Precious metals matter. And as we say goodbye here, Andy, remind people, why do precious metals matter? Why are they trying to stomp the price down? Why do they want to keep confidence in this con game known as the fiat dollar?
Simple. They're real money. They're the only assets that meet the definition. And there's a reason why that they've stood the test of time in preserving value for thousands of years. And 600 fiat currencies have failed, and 200 more are going to fail here. It's real money. And they are gold, silver, are the barometers of bad tiding, as I call them. And, when they go up, people innately know there's something wrong. So they'll try to keep them down as long as they can until they ultimately explode higher, like they always do. And by the way, they have been exploding higher nearly everywhere around the world because currencies are falling apart. It's only, the dollar and a select few other currencies where it hasn't happened yet. And it will.
That's absolutely right. We are being given a gift in this country because of the fragile state, but still, nevertheless, the existence of the world's reserve currency still being the U.S. dollar. We have a gift. It's an absolute gift. Look at these derivatives positions. If these derivatives positions did not exist, you cannot convince me right now that silver wouldn't be trading over $500 an ounce. You can't convince me of it. You can try, but I'm looking at the report from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and I can see what's actually going on behind the scenes. That's the reason we have these conversations. That's the reason we document the collapse. And the last thing I'll say, Andy, is that SD Bullion is a supporter of ours. Miles Franklin has been a supporter of ours. Those are the two companies I recommend, because I'll tell you, and the reason I'm saying that, Andy, is that it looks like Bullion Direct is having a lot of problems. It looks like they might be Tulving 2.0. We posted a story about that yesterday. You have to deal with vendors you can trust, and I just named two I trust. Andy, how do people do business with you guys over at Miles Franklin?
Right, again, we've been around 26 years without a complaint, A+ Better Business Bureau rating. And by the way, I'm going to be taping an interview with Andy Schechtman, our president and co-founder, this week regarding exactly what you're talking about, Bullion Direct and the state of the bullion industry. As for us, you can call us anytime, 800-822-8080, or email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com.
All right. Thank you, Andy. You guys, this is a very dramatic conversation. I'm really glad you're able to join us. If you liked it, please do spread it within your own sphere of influence on social media. Give us a like, follow us on Twitter, check us out at sgtreport.com, thelibertymill.com, and thephaser.com, Real News 24/7. And I can promise you this, we will be following all of these things we just discussed 24/7. It is the most important thing we can talk about. As the Republic falls, as the New World Order powers want to take us into their bleak New World Order future, we are going to stand with humanity. We will stand with the Greeks, we will stand with the Icelanders, and we will try to wake up our friends, neighbors, and colleagues, because the hour is late. Thanks so much for listening. God bless.